All right, good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome into the Nifty Q show. We're interviewing founders, leaders, builders in the NFT space. Today I'm sitting with the one and only Rizzle to talk his time in the NFT and blockchain space, building TheWIP and Avastars, his upcoming drop on ArtBlocks, and much more. Rizzle just had to sit through so much of BS from the production side. Sorry we got started here late, guys. Rizzle, how you doing, my man? Make sure to unmute as well.
Dude, I really appreciate you having me. If anyone understands audio failures and production problems, it is me, so it's all good. And excited to dive into all the things, man. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, I had a good friend on the episode yesterday of a Nifty Q show, Young Content, who I've met multiple times. We really just riffed on the industry. It was an awesome conversation that I didn't really have planned out. And I don't really have it planned out for you, but I've never met you, man. But I feel like through all these different connections and through seeing you in the space for the better part of 2-3 years, it's just, I feel a kindred connection to you. So hopefully we can get into some cool industry conversations, and it's long overdue. So I'm glad you took my invitation here today.
Awesome, man. Feeling is mutual. Feels like we've known each other for 10,000 crypto years. So yeah, let's do it, man.
Awesome, brother. All right, so I'm gonna get it started out here with Jared T, who commented on Twitter something about Mario Kart. So I just wanna hit that right off the bat. Why is he talking about queuing up for a game of Mario Kart?
I think Jared said I was going to lose too, which is very. There's only one person out there. Eclectic Method actually a while ago sort of rounded up a bunch of people to play crypto art Mario Kart together, and Emma. I'm not recalling her Twitter handle. She's out there and is an incredible Mario Kart player and is one of few people who's actually better than me. So I would dust Jared but I assume that's what he's referring to. And actually, a lot of money, rest in peace, a lot of money used to play with us as well. And he's also an incredible Mario Kart player. A little known fact about a lot of money is he's got sick handles on the Mario Kart.
That's shout out to a lot of money as well. Rest in peace there, man. I want to get into your background, maybe not just in the NFT space, but one thing I don't know about you, although I've been following you on Twitter for, like I said, years now. I don't know that origin story of how you got into crypto. How did you find yourself in the blockchain space before all of this craziness with NFTs popped off?
So I just sort of fell into the rabbit hole very early on, 2012, 2013, as a byproduct of being really broke and just trying to find different ways to hustle on the side. Went to school for a long time, got a master's degree, worked in nonprofits, and there's no money in it, and so I did all this stuff and still wasn't making any money. So I sort of fell into crypto, really just as a hustle, flipping junk coins, and but then I started getting really interested in the tech side of things and the implications of what the technology, the possibilities are with the technology. And then just really, aside from flipping junk coins, I just started tinkering around with all the things, different apps would come out and programs and things people were trying, and there's lots of different experiments going on with altcoins, and I was all this stuff is so weird but pretty cool, and I don't know, man, it's just I just sort of got obsessed with it, and still am, and NFTs really just sort of checked all the boxes for me once they came along.
So I'm gonna backpedal a little bit here. What was that master's degree in, and what were you interested in when you were before Rizzle? Before this this avatar in the metaverse that we know, this caricature in and of itself. What were you doing before you jumped into the metaverse a little bit?
I had a master's degree in social work. I actually had all these advanced, I still have them, but they're not current advanced certifications and stuff. I worked in group homes for foster kids or homeless kids and some alternative to incarceration programs. Did a lot of group counseling types of programs. Worked at some schools, with kids who were considered at risk and that kind of thing. And loved it and everything, but reached a certain point in that career where I was just trying to make a positive impact in the world, and got really frustrated with the bullshit of bureaucracy, and felt very much handcuffed in my ability to like go anywhere. I'd like sort of hit a peak in my career, and then I was like, well, am I just gonna like do this for like another 30 years or something? And like, so I felt like honestly, moving from that to crypto, like if the goal is to like, do something positive in the world, I'm like, I stand a much better chance making a bigger impact like going a crypto route than I do trying to like, just work within these like nonprofits that are sort of spinning in circles and like not well funded or like thought out. And it's just like sort of a shame, but like sort of a mess. But that's where my root and my heart is, like very, very much to this day, just trying to, do the right thing in a different angle type of thing.
Yeah, does that come out in some of your projects? Do you have like a social work kind of, I guess like things where you're kind of donating to different, nonprofits and things like this? Does this come out in the work that you do today?
To some extent, yes. I've done like some successful fundraisers, actually with a lot of money. Speaking of a lot of money, we had a very successful one last year. I just bought into a project that I just tweeted about that support. All the proceeds go to charitable cause, working with children who have been involved in the war in Ukraine, and like doing art stuff with them to help them recover. So am and try to be like very socially conscious. I haven't done. So my sort of angle on crypto, man, is I feel like charity is good and important, and I try to like keep that in mind. But I feel like the thing that crypto really offers people is opportunities that they wouldn't have before. And so I feel like that's like the biggest thing that will make a positive impact about crypto, like even more so than like donating to a charity that will help like a specific group of people or population. Like the ability for like crypto to extend opportunities to so many people is like the big play, I think, in terms of like how to really make a difference or like a meaningful impact.
Do you ever think about like what wouldn't have, like would you have still been at I'm not going to call it a dead end job because you were making an impact, but not as much of an impact? Do you think about like what would have happened if you never found crypto sometimes?
Yeah, dude, I would have found something, man. Like, yeah, man. I am just perpetually like tinkering and interested in things, and crypto just really checked all the boxes for me. But I think if it wasn't that, I would have become obsessed with something else probably. I like really like numbers. There's like a big math part of my brain that like I used to be very, very good at, and like that I never really tapped into professionally. So like, I like that aspect of crypto. It like, flexes that part of my brain that had been like sort of inactive for a long time. So, but I would have found something, man, most likely.
That's dope, man. I want to give a quick shout out to the chat really quick. Jared T is in the house. He just said GM friends. Jared, we were talking about your Mario Kart comment here earlier. So I think Rizzle needs a challenge here from you, my man. But Llama, Alien River, Tigbo, Coca, DJ Savage, appreciate y'all showing up early. We do these live on YouTube, but the Nifty Q Show is also on all podcasting platforms that you can find as well. So I like having the 2017 like altcoin discussion. I don't know how much I need to like poll the audience at some point. I don't know how much they like the reminiscing that goes on between people that were in the space back then. But like, what were you flipping, man? Were you still kind of grinding for, I guess, like even trying to survive at that point in the space? I know a lot of people didn't really make it, until that 2017 timeframe.
Yeah, so I managed to play my cards decently, man. So I have a picture of it. I should post it at some point. When Bitcoin crashed to like $250, I was like, we're screwed. I like squandered all of this, coin that I had like flipped and like hustled for all this time that was supposed to like, potentially be our way out of this like dead end job and everything. I was like, fuck. Like if I'm gonna lose it all, we're at least going to come away with a computer. So I bought this computer for used like a refurbished Lenovo laptop for my wife. It like weighs like 1,000 pounds for one Bitcoin. It was $250, and we still have it. It's like, and I look at that laptop every now and again to just sort of like reminisce. But so what was I? So everything in the beginning, man. There was. I was very early on in like Cryptsy. I don't know if you remember Cryptsy and like Poloniex. There was just and then there's a lot of like subreddits that were like pretty active with coins that were attempting to do interesting things. There was like Mint Coin and like Red Coin and like I remember seeing Dogecoin like come to life, and I was like, this is the dumbest thing in the entire world. There's like no way this is going to be successful. Like, screw this coin. I'm not buying into it. Obviously, like completely wrong. I mean, not that it's not like totally pointless or like whatever, but like, here we are. It's still alive, like way past a lot of other things. So a little bit of everything, man, and got completely wrecked a few times. By the time 2017 came along, I like managed to liquidate a little bit of stuff to ride out the getting wrecked completely all over again, so it softened the blow like a little bit. And still out here, man.
Yeah, we all have like I survived the bear market of 2018-19. Like if you were back there, everybody who was in that timeline can kind of have that recollection and kind of smile that we all did survive. So you're kind of you have this reputation of being a great community builder in the space. I'm interested, like it's been so long since 16, 17, but what was your take on communities back then? Were they obviously they're a little bit different than the NFT space. There's a little more culture, in my opinion, invested in these NFT communities as opposed to just financially based. But I want to get your take on like what communities were like back then.
Horrible. Fucking awful, man. Toxic, shilly, terrible, awful, horrible. I like, played around in almost all of them because it was the only place to like learn stuff too. So you had to like sift through the garbage to, figure out what was really going on and what was like interesting and everything. I actually ran into Rare Skrilla, I guess almost was it a year ago? No, maybe it was New York. It doesn't matter. And we were reminiscing. The Poloniex, the exchange, which is still out there, had a troll box in around like 2014, 2015 that him and I were both active in. And the Poloniex troll box was like an amazing like cultural thing. It was like only alive for like a year and a half, maybe that. I don't recall. Robness was in there. There was like a lot of OGs who like actually we didn't like know each other, were hanging out in there like back in the day, but that was like a glimpse of like real awesomeness, and it was exactly like what you thought it was. It was like a troll box. People like trying to artificially like pump their stuff, but there was a lot of like really funny people and conversations going on in there as well. And Robness would like constantly get banned like every single day. It was like like a running joke. But it really wasn't until NFTs, man, that I feel like I really fell in love with the overlap of like the crypto NFT community, because I felt like we got like a injection of like creators and artists and like builders who like are here for like a slightly different reason and are like genuinely really cool and interesting people. So it's changed a lot, man. It's much better in my opinion.
It has changed a lot, and we've gone through like multiple cycles here, like even within the NFT space now. Like we saw this like huge explosion in interest. I was listening to the Matthew and Rizzle show, which you definitely want you to plug your podcast while you're here. But you guys were talking about how like it actually is seeping in the other way now, where the NFT space is getting much bigger, and some of the values that we kind of like had at the beginning of this are going away. In like some of those values that were back in those 2017 times have now found themselves in the NFT space, where it's just kind of about flipping. It's just about the financial aspect, at least like taking an outsized role in what the NFT space is now. Do you feel that way? Do you want to expound on that at all?
Yeah, man. It seems like in the past, like that's always happened in like the peak of like hype cycles or whatever, right? You get all like the flippers and the scammers and the shillers and like all this, everyone trying to capitalize on like the momentum and everything. But I feel like in the past, like it crashed by now. Like we're like still up here, and they're still here, like doing their thing. Like they're supposed to go away now, so then we get back to like building and yeah, man, I feel like that's why a lot of people feel similarly to what you're just saying about like the 2017, 2018 crowd. Is like you either lost a lot of money and we're still here, or we're here and there wasn't really any money to be made. So like everyone who sort of survived that time like has sort of like a different reason for being here, or at least like started off that way, or at least that's what it seems like to me. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I want to get into this like founding of Avastars, but before that, where did Rizzle come from, like in a timeline perspective, but also from like a perspective of just like what the heck is Rizzle? You know, like I would just want to kind of get that that background.
Sure. So Rizzle, I was when I was in grad school, I was working a shitty job at a restaurant washing dishes, and a lot of the high school kids were cool and just sort of started calling me Rizzle. And it stuck at that job. And then like after that, when I needed like a handle or like a screen name for something and wanted to be anon, I would just use Rizzle. And then I became like known enough that now I'm like Rizzle in real life somehow or something now. It was supposed to be my anon name that like nobody knows me like for real, but now I'm like doxed and real Rizzle for real or something.
Does anybody call you by your real name? Are you out there? Like, do people know your real name, or that everybody literally calls you Rizzle?
When I go to like these conferences and stuff, like everybody calls me Rizzle. I don't even introduce myself, the government name anymore because nobody knows who I am or like really cares or whatever. But now I'm like well known enough as Rizzle that I just introduce myself. There was like a awkward time when I first started like going to these things where I would be like, "Hey, I'm Ryan, but you might know me as Rizzle," and like it's just starting off every conversation that way. And now I'm just like, "Fuck it, hey, I'm Rizzle."
Yeah.
But actually, it's better because everybody else started doing the same when I was at like NFT NYC last. I noticed that a lot of other people had completely given up on their like real names and now just introduce themselves as like their screen names or Twitter handles or whatever because it's just too much to keep track of.
I just want to give a quick shout. I mean, there's so many people to give like shout outs to in this conversation. Namely, like Jared is still in the house here saying Gary V doxed you. So apparently Gary doxed you.
Gary V doxed me. That's true. I hit them up. I was like, "Yo, can you like stop doxing me, please?" And they did change the updated thing. But Jared, report back if you see that it has not changed. But I saw it, and I think they stopped doxing me.
Yeah,
I was like, "What the fuck?"
I still to this day don't think I know Easy's real name. So I'm just gonna. He'll always be Easy in crypto to me.
Yeah, it's better that way. We don't need to know. Who cares?
Shout out to NFT NYC too. Like that, a bunch of people that I only knew as like their handle. Like NFT NYC had their handle, but also their real name, and I was like, damn, this is like a full list of just doxed individuals. But let's get into like founding Avastars. You guys are like, or you in particular, are at the forefront, I think, of like pushing actual NFT and like namely metaverse values. Like a conversation I was having with Easy like 2 days ago is like so many people are pushing metaverse now, like the term metaverse, like Facebook is like rebranding all this stuff, and there's only really like 3,000 of us that are ever in the actual metaverse, and you guys are literally number one, number two when it comes to just pushing like stuff in crypto voxels, and it's just really fucking dope. So just tell me about like founding Avastars, kind of like gaining a foothold in the NFT space as a builder.
Yeah, man. So I sort of jumped on Jim's back with Avastars. But I did for a reason because Avastars is cool. So Avastars was like Jim's brainchild, basically like based on the concept that like all of the metadata or as much as humanly possible from the NFT should live entirely on the blockchain rather than relying on IPFS or like a third party thing that like can essentially like rug you of your NFT and like disappear. So Avastars is sort of like his proof of concept that you can make really dope NFTs that are stored completely on the blockchain so that if everything goes away, as long as Ethereum is alive, your Avastar will still be alive. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Like, this is the way it should be done. Like, at least in theory, it's not like super practical for like, say, like gaming NFTs where you need to like run off like a million of them or something like that. But for like art or like, high-end NFTs, like this seems like the way something like should be built. So I was like, yeah, man, this is a dope project. You should bring me on board and I can help you like, get the word out there and like, accentuate its dopeness or whatever. Came up with like the on-chain gang like thing and people got it, man. I feel like other people vibed with like the concept behind it as well, in terms of like, you know, in a perfect world, you want all of your NFT living on chain. And other projects have started like flexing that as well when they, you know, get released. They're like, you know, make sure to include like this is entirely on chain. So I feel like, you know, we did our job, but it was like the right thing to do too, like making this a big deal and important to people, because before that no one really like gave a shit or like knew that it was like a thing at all. It was sort of like the default assumption of a lot of people that like, you know, you buy an NFT, it's on the blockchain. You don't really intuitively like dive deeper into where stuff is being hosted.
Yeah, I actually haven't met Jimmy, but and I hear so much about him. Obviously, he's a big builder. So you just like went to him and were like, "Hey, I want to help you with this project," and he was like, "Hell yeah, come do it." So I want to get that story, but also kind of break down, because I've never even talked to the guy. What makes Jimmy such like a big figure in the space?
Jim's got a loud mouth. That's probably where it started. Jim picked a lot of fights with a lot of people. I mean, in the very beginning, there was like, you know, Jim and me and like, you know, 25 other people. So, you know, Jim's just been out here running his mouth for a long time. Jim is also a very, very intelligent dude. So, you know, he's got that going for him as well. So it's actually a funny story, man. Like Jim like, was out on Twitter like yelling at trash artists, saying like stop making such garbage or whatever. Everyone was getting all pissed off at Jim. Jim was like, you know, out there like, you know, getting pissed off at them. Matt and I were doing the podcast, and I said to Matt, I was like, dude, I don't know who this guy Jim is, but he seems to be like really pissing a lot of people off. We should get him on the podcast and like see what his deal is. And so Jim came on the podcast, and we like actually all like hit it off immediately. It was like a really fun podcast. And then famously met Jim in person in NFT NYC back in like 2019, I guess. And it was much smaller, like, you know, it was like one room conference or whatever.
There's an NFT NYC in 2019.
Was it I feel like I'm in a time warp, man. It's possibly like 2020. One of those.
Yeah.
No, dude, it must have been 2019. Because I don't know, man. It doesn't matter. So anyway, so Nike had a presentation at NFT NYC, and it was like some bullshit. Like they're trying to like copyright patents on like NFTs they're trying to put in sneakers. It was like a really dumb idea. And Jim actually like stood up in the audience. Now, mind you, there's, you know, not a ton of people there. It's a pretty small conference at this point. But Jim started like yelling at the Nike presentation, and I immediately got up and I sat behind Jim and I started like egging Jim on. I was like, dude, yes, this is bullshit, man. This is like, well, Disney tries to do. They just try and like patent like all this stuff. And so I started like provoking Jim. And so, you know, between that and the podcast, we just got to talking like afterwards, and I was like, yeah, dude, we you know, we get the same thing here, man. Let's do this thing. And he was getting to the point where Avastars was, you know, a few months out for launch and needed some help basically in order to make the project successful. It was like beyond a one-man operation at some point, and so that's, yeah, man, that's how like NFT 42 basically got started, and then we started bringing people on, and now it's like a big ass thing.
Yeah, let's talk about the whip a little bit too, because like particularly the things you guys are doing in the metaverse, I think are really dope as we again move into the next cycle, which I think is going to have more to do with people understanding what the hell the metaverse is. So like, what were you founding the whip? Like what ideals were you founding the whip with? And then where is it today?
The whip, what ideals? The whip is founded on basically just trying, the whip stands for the work in progress. And that's basically the only like mantra we've tried to stick to. It's a virtual event. We route the audio through Discord. We have a few speakers on each week, and then we usually have some sort of like in-world thing going on, a scavenger hunt or like a tour of an art museum, or you know, something going on, some metaverse like type event. And everyone, it's cool, man. Everyone's got like, you know, their unique wearables that they've crafted. They're like all NFTs or like distributed and everything. And it's like a big, strange event. Really with the only common theme that, you know, we try to highlight people who are doing cool things in the space, and also like continue to leave the door open for like just weird experiments and new things. So the whip is sort of like sort of got like its general theme, like it's an event that happens every week on Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern time. But in terms of like what it is or what ideals it is, I feel like it's sort of like an amoeba and like traveling circus type of thing where we're just always trying different stuff.
You guys were talking about like the history of the metaverse and like just doing things in there and how cool it is that you have those memories of, doing the whip all the way back in, 2019 or 2020, and how cool that shit's going to be in 10 years, with looking back and being like, we were the first ones here. Do you have any like thoughts on like the metaverse as it exists today and like where it'll be in the future?
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I feel like it was like 1,000 years ago, man. I remember like standing in the Token Smart Amphitheater. It was like me and Jim and Matt and like Josie Bellini and Easy Crypto, and DeFi Dad, and we were just like talking about like, wow, what if like, this actually does become a thing, and like, people start doing things here, it just seemed like such an abandoned like ghost town, but there we were with our like, little naked avatars, like, checking it out and everything. So I don't know, man. I don't see how it like doesn't continue to also be an amoeba, like expand in different ways. I feel like the metaverse is sort of like everywhere and nowhere, like simultaneously. But I feel like I'm a big like decentralization maxi in the sense that like not that I necessarily believe in everything that it that happens with it, but I sort of believe it's like the inevitable course of events. And so I'd like to think more interoperability, more like NFT related things that work in different places. Not so many. I feel like what people think of as like the metaverse now is almost just like siloed video games. Like everything is like got its own little economy and its own stuff and everything. And I feel like what we want is everything to work everywhere, and not we want to sort of break up these little silos and sort of like level the playing field so that it's more user friendly rather than it is like a platform that someone's just trying to make some money on type of thing.
Yeah, what I see in like the projects that you're either getting involved in or founding is just like you looking at being on the fringes of things, kind of as the scout almost, and like seeing, okay, what do we need, right? Like what is
Like it.
missing here? Like the on-chain gang stuff, like that's a thing that was missing at that time. There's a lot of the whip probably where you're highlighting a lot of like new projects and things like this. So you're now founding the on-chain chain, right? Like you're doing this with the art blocks, and you mentioned interoperability as like one of the key ideals there of like having something that you could take and not have that siloed garden piece there. So kind of like talk about that, man. Like talk about kind of founding on chain, what the details are and how that all came about.
Yeah. Thank you, man. So it's a it's a in my head, it's a very, very cool idea masquerading as a very, very silly, goofy idea. But basically, the on-chain chain is like a wearable for your avatar, and it's like a big, like Flava Flav style like chain, and they're all like randomly generated. The project's going to get launched on ArtBlocks. Everything on ArtBlocks is all built completely on chain. So I like that the thread of the on chain gang sort of rolls into the on chain chain. I had to explain to someone. I was like, you don't get it? It's like a play on the on chain gang, like on chain. Anyway, so I had this idea like a long time ago, sort of like what we were just talking about. I'm like we do these things in virtual worlds all the time. We do them in different virtual worlds. I want like one thing that I can like bring in all different places and not have to buy like a different chain for every single virtual world that you take your little guy into or whatever. So I was like, we want interoperable stuff. So that's like what I set out to build, like and wanted to do like the like goofy like on chain type of thing. But so in theory, man, it's like a high end piece of like metaverse fashion. It's like built really really well. Completely on chain. So in my head, that's like some boss shit, and but it's also Finding that it's really, really difficult to deliver the interoperability piece that I want and that everyone wants. So that's going to be like the ongoing sort of like mission with this thing is to, so like when you buy one, you'll be able to import the .vox file and like basically do whatever you want with it. It's like very seamless to like convert that and mint that in like a few different places, but also some of these places are like still walled gardens and might need like some on chain pressure to like let us bring our chains in or whatever, but they should, right? Um, so so that's gonna it offers some level of like interoperability like right out of the box, but I feel like this is important, and so I've been talking to Jin and Toxam, both of whom are like very much on the forefront of interoperability and working with those concepts within the metaverse and NFTs to figure out like how we can continue to get this thing in as many places as possible. So I think it's cool, man. It's like not you buy a lot of these NFTs and you get a roadmap, like you get an on-chain chain, you get like a thing that you can use. That's cool.
Yeah, I want to talk on the fashion piece of this. You said you mentioned to your wife that you're like a high-end fashion designer now, which I think is fucking hilarious. But I want to stay in the interoperability piece still. Like, are you going to Decentraland? Are you going to these other metaverses and like having physical discussions, like the actual technical details of getting this done? Like people kind of like say that this isn't really even, I guess, like achievable, this interoperability between all of these different games, but you're of course like going out and proving that it's actually achievable. But how does that work? Like, do you go to these different projects and
Janky.
and figure it out? Yeah.
Yeah, janky. So basically, have consulted a lot of people and built the original on-chain chain in a way that would lend itself to being as cross-compatible as humanly possible in a perfect world, which is why it's done in like the Vox model style, because if you do something like super polished and like high end, obviously if you bring it into like crypto voxels or something, you're going to need a different rendering of it or something like that. So wanted it to work in something like Minecraft or crypto voxels or Sandbox, but also you can bring it into Somnium Space and Decentraland. It will look exactly the same. You'll be rocking like a Vox model thing, but at least it'll be consistent across like every single thing. So that was important, like in like the way it was designed to put together things that would be easily replicable across all these platforms. Um, Giving people access to the .vox file is a pretty decent level of interoperability out of the box because you can convert it to a bunch of things and mint it in like crypto voxels instantly. Have talked to everybody basically you can think of in terms of like how to get this in world. There's like a lot of logistical hoops with all these places, but I've basically been told, and I believe this to be true, and knowing everybody at this point, once it's out there and have something to present to them to do something with, it's a lot easier to work at it from that angle rather than saying like, hey, I've got this thing, it's going to come out. I would want a lot of people are going to want. Yeah, exactly. So, but the conversations have been had. It's been built in a very like thoughtful way to allow it to be as easily cross compatible as possible. And the thought, we're still trying to figure out the best way to go about it. It's possible we build like a third party website to you have the NFT to continue to access different file types, if that's what people want or what's necessary, or if platforms can just onboard this thing directly. So I'm gonna have to fight some people a little bit, but I think this thing is good, man, and I think people are gonna want, the whole idea is you can bring it places. So I think a little social pressure, may smooth that process out. But I really feel like I built something that I wanted, and I feel like this is, even if you don't want a big goofy looking chain, I feel like people do want NFTs that are cross compatible and work in different places and are on chain. And so I feel like it checks a lot of boxes if you're just like a fan of those ideals, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. From the metaverse perspective, you mentioned you were like going to these projects or people that are building these, like, I mean, we could probably say walled gardens and it'd be accurate, but at least they have some ideals from Web3.
Sure.
Obviously, you're not having the conversation with Zuckerberg at this point in the conversation, but like from your perspective, who's doing this the best? Like, I want to get some Rizzle spicy takes on like who's doing the metaverse well within the native Web3 ecosystem, like who's not doing it well.
Um, Jin and Toxam are like way out on the fringe, like you were saying. They like really are pushing the interoperability piece. I'm sure I'm forgetting like a couple people, but I feel like there's not Boombox Head is out there as well, really pushing those things. Jin is like the dude from Snow Crash. He like basically is the person from Snow Crash. I don't know, I forget the person's name, but if you've ever read Snow Crash, Jin is like basically that person.
I'm mad I'm forgetting the author's name. That's
Yeah,
Someone
yeah,
will
man,
throw it
I'm
out in
I'm
chat.
blanking on it as well. Um, so those three specifically, and not even like directly NFT related. They all of them understand NFTs, but they're very like metaverse, almost metaverse first thinkers. That kind of thing. Um, I mean, who's not getting it right, man? If you just want me to talk trash on Zuckerberg,
Well,
talk trash on Zuckerberg. He should allow on-chain chains in his goofy platform, though. I'll tell you that
yeah,
much.
that would be a big win for you guys. But anyways, I guess I mean more like the project, right? The platforms like the Decentraland, Somnium Spaces, Crypto Voxels. Like you guys obviously have been working in Crypto Voxels for a while. Another combo would be like, why hasn't Crypto Voxels really seen like a big adoption piece there with more metaverse being thrown out into the ether, but like who's doing it well from a platform perspective?
Uh, Dude, I love crypto voxels. I know it hasn't like taken off. I feel like people are sleeping on it, man, and it's one of the only platforms that like sort of works like decently. Decentraland is cool, man. I feel like it's got like a different flavor, like sort of a different culture to it. It's not as like wacky or weird or like free to like CryptoVoxels. One of the best things about it is like people can just create their own wearables and bring them in like pretty seamlessly. It's like very free like that. So there's a lot of like real like radical self-expression like weirdness going on in CryptoVoxels, which I love, which just isn't really possible on Decentraland. Um, so Decentraland is cool. Let's
Sandbox,
see. I don't. What's that?
sandbox.
Dude, I haven't even really gotten into Sandbox. I feel like has anybody really? I think they've had like some isolated events or something, but trust me, man. I would love for Sandbox to be really, really cool. But I feel like, dude, I feel like the same about Monaverse, man. Like Monaverse is really cool, but like it's sort of like a ghost town, and that's what like CryptoVoxels really has going for it. That I feel like I don't know. A lot of the speculators want like high res graphics and like interesting tokenomics and all this kind of thing, but like people actually like hang out in crypto voxels. Like
Yeah.
things go on there. And I used to get really frustrated and annoyed with Ben Nolan because he sometimes seems like so aloof in terms of like delivering things that would be really good for crypto voxels. But they hired Bit Pixie. She came in out of nowhere, and I'm like, she is like the greatest thing to ever happen to crypto voxels, like almost definitely. Outside
What
of
does she
crypto
do?
voxels being created, dude, I don't even know what she does, but she seems to be in control of everything. She seems to have like sent Ben to like his room to go do like programmer stuff, and she's out here like calling the big shots and like steering the ship and straightening things up and everything. And she rocks. But that's why I love crypto voxels, man. I feel like that's why a lot of people do, and it's interesting, man. Like a lot of the OG like art community like has builds and like has put a lot of time into making builds in crypto voxels that aren't like really going anywhere. So it's just in a lot of ways like even though it's sort of janky looking like to the outsider, it's just so much more of a fleshed out like product and community and like culture and like like you're saying, man, like people have like memories of like things that happened there, like
Mhm.
lots of them now, at this point. So I feel like everybody else is sort of playing catch up on that front, and it's really hard to just like create something that you get a lot of people to genuinely love, even if it's nicely polished and refined. Like people still got to show up. It's tough.
Yeah, that ghost town vibe is like thrown out a lot when you're talking about like these early days metaverse creations, right? Like you can only get people to be in there for so long, and then then they're gone. Like what would you do if you were the head of Crypto Voxels, or you were the head of one of these other metaverse plays? Like obviously you're touching on interoperability with the on-chain chain, like you're fixing that or hoping to push that forward. Like what are some other things that metaverses could do to improve and go forward?
Dude, I feel like whatever Aavegotchi is doing is really cool. I don't totally understand. I still don't totally understand Aavegotchi. I feel so bad, man. I've like, I know all those people. I have an Aavegotchi. I pet it, but I like still all their shit is like so confusing. But what they are doing that's really interesting is like you can, your little gotchi can like run around the gotchi verse and like I don't know what happens. You like pick up things and like put them places or whatever, like earn tokens. But me as like the gotchi holder, I can like lend my gotchi to someone else who can like farm their gotchi tokens or whatever, and then I get like a small cut of whatever they've farmed with my gotchi, and then when they give my gotchi back or whatever. So I'm like that's kind of interesting. Like this whole concept of like now there's like a little economy and like a game like woven into it. And I feel like we start to see more of that because you can create these, with NFTs, especially on Polygon, man. You can like you spin up these like micro ecosystems where like you got to do a couple different things in world and then like stop by the shoe store and once you turn those things in, you get your new pair of shoes. And so I think from like a social media, social engineering standpoint, there's like a lot of like really interesting things you can do to incentivize people to spend more time in these places. But I don't know. I think we're like still far away from like people just like going there to hang out. It's just like there's just too many. Unless there is like an event going on, I feel like you need a task or a mission or it to be like gamified in like some type of way to really get like constant action going on in there. But eventually, like who knows, man? Maybe it's just like I pass by you on the metaverse, like picking up my shoe token like every day. We just like go pick up our shoe tokens because it's profitable and it makes sense, and we're all sort of like working, farming strange things in the metaverse, man. I don't know.
That sounds a little like Snow Crash. I had this conversation with Easy Man. I want to get your take. It's kind of convoluted, so I'll try to keep it like super simple. But basically, we're saying like there's more NFT projects launching than there is new people coming into the ecosystem. So like this is like adding too much supply into an ecosystem that there's not that huge demand anymore. Do you feel like
Yeah.
that? And can it be related to Metaverse? I mean, when Ape drops, now we have Sandbox, Crypto Voxels, Avagotch, like all of these land places. That's only further driving the point that you're talking about, where it might be ghost towns.
Yeah, yeah. I think like you were saying before, man, there's only so many people out here who are like real big enthusiasts, and honestly, man, I feel like that's the other big disconnect with these like land sales and like this metaverse stuff is like they're falling into the hands of speculators who aren't builders like doing anything with them, which sort of like creates this ghost town. So there's sort of like a thing, a bridge that needs to be gapped where like how do you get these things in the hands of people who will build not only build on them but build like desirable places for people to like come hang out and actually like use the platforms and everything. So I feel like there's certainly a place for like owning land parcels, but I think we start to see more of like the on cyber stuff is so cool, man. How you can just like easily spin up like your own art gallery and people can like go visit it. I think we start to see like a lot more of those kind of things where like cookie cutter type experiences. You can just like sort of pick your free house and like decorate your free house and like that kind of thing. But I also feel like owning something and paying for something makes it seem more real, and so I don't feel like the desire for that goes away. I think it just gets bombarded with more like options and everything. But yes, man, the whole space is just totally totally bombarded with junk. I don't know how we like get away from that. Like ever, really. I mean, unless like we have like another huge crash, like I feel we've probably are just gonna have an endless stream of like crappy celebrity drops because the cost to try is so minimal, you know, and the reward of it working out is so high that like I think there's just, you know, just a steady, it's like the spam box in your email, man, just a steady stream of garbage like flowing in constantly to see what sticks or who will bite.
At this like post-COVID like time where we're actually able to like go back out, I feel like that I'm noticing that there's like a big like signal for great projects, at least in my mind, that are hosting events. Like, because that takes a little bit more work. Like, it takes a little bit more like actual heart and soul than it is like, let me just droll out another PFP project and see what sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, man. I feel like, you know, now I think the class of 2021 or whatever you call them are like a little bit more educated. A lot of them got like, you know, rugged a few times and wrecked a few times and are now like a little bit familiar with like, you know, maybe it is important to pay attention to people who have been through a couple cycles and are still here, or like, you know, people who have built things with integrity in the past that you can sort of look towards. For a long time, I feel like the space like wasn't mature enough for people to sort of, you know, look that far back. You know, you only have like a year or two of history, so like who really knows what's going to happen? But now I feel like the space is maturing in some way, but it also seems like people still buy garbage.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I want you to show the Matthew and Rizzle show real quick. Like, tell us where you can find it. Because I was listening to it, and you guys were talking about like a shakedown. Like, I'm gonna do a shakedown of what you've got like in your wallet these days. So I want to do this on my show. So like
Cool.
the shakedown of what you're collecting right now in this environment.
What am I collecting? I just bought those couple pieces for charity. I've been buying a lot of frogs, man. Like full disclosure, I buy into my own projects that I'm involved with because I believe in them. Honestly, the fly frogs are doing like a lot of cool things. So I own a whole bunch of fly frogs that I've been slowly accumulating as they sit at a low price point. Let's see what else. A little bit of everything, man. I enjoy like scrolling through Twitter, finding an artist that I've never heard of before that's like, you know, just starting out and like, you know, just selling a couple editions on the cheap or something like that, and like, you know, randomly scooping up some of those things. I do a lot of that. My collection is like all over the place, man. I got like a ton. Collectibles, art. I try to make it a point to have at least like, you know, one or two things from like, you know, my friends or like the OGs in the space, or you know, people who I respect a lot, even if it's not like necessarily my style of art. Like, you know, I buy a lot of stuff just to support other people and their projects. Lots of weird stuff. I like goofy things with funny eyeballs. I like gravitate towards funny looking characters. That's probably like what I'm most known for being drawn towards.
Yeah, we're 50 minutes into the conversation, so I want to open this up to anybody in chat here for any lightning questions for Rizzle, because we got to let him go here shortly. Tigbo's asking, who was the last person Rizzle sauced? What is sauce? Now I need to know. What is this, like an inside joke? What's going on?
Oh, so sauce. So we used to do these Avastar giveaways in Token Smart Discord. Me and Sandy Meows. And we would have like a weekly competition where people would have to like do a couple things in order to be entered in the contest, and then we'd like spin this wheel live and of whoever, you know, did all the things, and then they'd win something, usually an Avastar, and then we give out like a bunch of other stuff too to the rest of the people, like wearables or whatever. But the jokes, so people started winning who like weren't attending like the live giveaway event. And so we're like, this is dumb, man. Like you should have to earn it. Like if we're giving you like an Avastar or like whatever, you got to show up for this thing. So I don't even know where like the term sauced like started from specifically, but that sort of became the term like when someone won we'd be like in Discord, be like, okay, so and so, are you here? Are you here? And if they're not there, like, nope, sauced, next. We just give that thing away to like somebody else. So so that's how that started. Who the last person was in that context, I have no idea. In real life, if you scroll through my Twitter feed, it's probably not too far down. There's probably somebody I threw some shade at.
What are some hot takes that you've got about the space today, man? I know you've like laid them out to us here, obviously throughout the whole conversation, but anything maybe we didn't touch on as it's related to like the NFT space and what you'd like to see less of or more of? What are some other spicy takes here for the listeners out there?
Oh shit, man! I wish I had something like queued up for you.
Yeah.
What do you need? Dude, more innovation. Like honestly, and I'm a big fan of like art for the sake of art, and I think, and I love that, and that has its place, and that doesn't need utility or innovation. Like art can be art, and I love crypto art and collecting NFTs, that are just art for the sake of art. But I personally love innovation, and that's one of the things that is attracted me so much to the space in the first place, which has had influence on like all the projects that I've been involved with. I'm like, this tech is so cool. We can like do so many like really amazing things with it, and it enables like so much awesome stuff that we would never be able to do prior to having this technology, and so I feel like we're sort of in this like golden age of like opportunity where you can do like all these things, and people are just like churning out such
Yetis.
garbage, but I also like some garbage too, so this is also like sort of the problem, or maybe it's not a problem, but I do love innovation and am drawn to that, and which is why I created the on-chain chain, and am leaning heavily in that direction. But so, yeah, man, probably less junk, even though I have some junk sometimes.
Over the past like last 2 weeks, I've been forming this like thought process too of like PFPs, right? Is kind of what you're talking about. It's like, let's get more innovation around the actual. If you're gonna launch a PFP, have it be something new as opposed to just here we go. Again,
Yeah.
art for art's awesome, but like it's just another PFP. But to be honest, like if we're playing this out over the course of years and people getting adopted into this space, the market for PFPs, for avatars in the space, is huge. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
there's still billions
Agreed.
of people to be onboarded into the avatar, PFP side. So I do agree though. Like I appreciate the tech that you're kind of bringing to the table with the on-chain chain. So kind of throw out any details there as it's related to the sale, man, before we stop off.
Okay, so real quick, man, I want to shout out the Fly Frogs because they're a PFP project that I love that is doing really interesting things that that lends itself in that direction too, man. You like feed these frogs like polygon flies, and they produce a tadpole on mainnet, but you might get twins, and they have like recessive traits. And so I'm like, even though it's like a goofy, weird project, it's like they're doing interesting blockchain things that like a lot of people aren't tinkering around with, and it has like that element of weirdness. So yeah, man, more of that. But so, all right, dude. Details on Chain. I'm sort of freaking out, to be honest with you. I'm like, I gotta wait a whole another week for this thing to be dropped. Like, how am I gonna like sleep? A week from today, or whenever people are listening to this, it'll be the 14th of April, 3 o'clock Eastern time. It'll go live on ArtBlocks. It'll be a run of 2,000. It'll be a Dutch auction starting at 1.5 ETH, going all the way down to like basically nothing within the span of like 50 minutes, like 0.025 or something like that. So a lot of these calls were made not entirely by me. ArtBlocks like has a routine that or a way of doing things. So there's no pre-sale list or anything. It's just gonna go live, and and it happens live at the WIP. Like they scheduled
Oh
this thing.
God.
I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! Like the drop happens like live at the WIP. So I'm gonna crash and burn, or it's gonna be a legendary day, like completely live in front of my audience. So yeah, man, no pressure.
Either
Freaking out a
way,
little bit.
it's gonna be legendary. Just we don't know if it's gonna be a famous day or like an infamous day for sure. That's
Yeah,
sick, dude.
yes, dude.
I, I wish you all the success, man. Like honestly, like I should have had you on the network a long time ago. But it sounds like the things you're doing at the WIP, and I know LADZ City was on the WIP a little while ago, but It seems like, we got the similar ideals in pushing the space forward. So it was great to get you on.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate you having me and being able to have the conversation with you, dude. It's been great.
All right, man. I'm going to let you go. Stick around just for a second. I'm going to wave goodbye to all the listeners out there. Anybody who's on audio afterwards, thank you so much for tuning in to the Nifty Q show today. We have NFT Live tomorrow. Make sure to tune in to that on the network as well. So I'm going to sign off, guys. Our Vibe, our tribe. Rizzle, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me. Later, everybody.